Hi, my name is Mike Anderson from Collision Advice. I recently had the honor and the pleasure of sitting down with some of my friends at CCC. And while sitting down with them, they asked me if I had any advice or any suggestions that maybe I could provide to shops that would help them to improve their parts procurement best practices. Of course, I always have a little bit of advice to give someone, or at least a lot of opinions. So we sat down and we developed a video series that we hope that will help you to improve your shop's parts processes. And we're here today to talk about repair planning, blueprinting, 100% teardown. A lot of different terminology that we use for this. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to pose a question to you. Let's say that you had a body technician that worked for you, and this body technician fixed 10 cars a week, and 5 of them came back every single week. What would you eventually do? Well, eventually you'd probably have a talk with him, right? But let's say that technician continues to have half of their jobs come back every week. You'd probably make a decision to dismiss that employee, or bottom line is you'd fire him. What about the painter? You have a painter that's working for you. Paints 10 cars a week. 5 of them he has to redo, color match, runs, dirt. What would you do? Eventually, you'd let them go. But what about an estimator? They get a vehicle in, they do a 100% teardown, and after they do a 100% teardown, they write a sheet, and then they still have a supplement on it. We need to start looking at supplements as waste. So today, what we really want to focus on is how do we reduce supplements? And we're going to talk about 100% teardown. Again, some people use the term blueprint, repair plan, but today, for today's presentation, we're going to use the term 100% teardown. Now, what are some of the benefits of 100% teardown? Some of the benefits are it'll reduce supplements, and supplements are waste. Again, think about it, you have to redo your estimate. It also improves technician efficiency. If we write a really good sheet, the technician can stay on the vehicle, they don't have to stop and start and stop and start. We also will help to improve your cycle time or your touch time and improve CSI, helps cash flow, lowers your stress and chaos, improves these on-time deliveries, and most importantly, lets you get out of there on time on a Friday afternoon. So bottom line is, why are we still talking about 100% teardown or blueprinting when it's been around for 10 or 15 years? Well, first of all, I think the biggest reason is that there seems to be a really incomplete understanding of what 100% teardown is. I think a lot of times body men will have their own perception of what 100% teardown is. They'll say, well, Mike, I can see all the damage. Well, that's correct. The estimator, well, I can see all the parts. Well, that's correct. And with the painter, well, I don't have to go get the body man to take anything off. So bottom line is, we have to understand that a lot of people have different perceptions of 100% teardown, with none of them being incorrect. But I think that they don't have a total overall 100% teardown. The next reason is, why do we not do 100% teardown? Well, quite honestly, and I love body techs, my dad was a body technician, but a lot of times a lot of your body techs will make excuses. They'll say, if I do 100% teardown, I'll forget how the car goes back together. Well, it might rain in the car. I'll have to push it. So bottom line is, we need to figure out how to overcome these obstacles or these excuses. And we need to figure out how to take and do a 100% teardown, one sheet, one estimate, one parts order. So what we're going to talk about today is, how do we implement a culture of 100% teardown or repair planning? Well, I want to share a quick story with you. After I sold my shops in Wagon Collision Center 3.5 years ago, I actually moved to Hawaii. And when I moved to Hawaii, I had the opportunity to work with a shop over there. And when I worked with this shop in Hawaii, one of the things I discovered was the value of doing things with your employees versus to them. Quite often people try to do things to their people. And when they do it to your people, it's kind of like you're a dictatorship. A lot of times I see these great posters that are hung on the walls that says, here's how you need to do X, Y, and Z. Well, that's just something we're putting on a wall and we're telling our employees this is what you need to follow. When we do something with people, they tend to gravitate more towards that. Why is that? Well, number one is because they have some say-so in it. We're doing it. There's communication between all parties involved. So a lot of value-added benefits of doing things with people versus to them. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how we did that. So what I did was, I went and brought all the body men together, all of the painters together, all the estimators together, the entire staff. And I told the staff, I said, look, we're going to create a list that is our list. Not something somebody in the industry made, but it's our list made by the members of this shop. And we're going to write a list that's going to be called the R&I poster. And what I want to do is I want to write a list of all the things that you may have to remove during 100% teardown and why you might have to remove them. So then I asked them, what are some things that you think should be on this list? One of the people in the audience, who was actually a painter, said, have you R&I'd everything for paint? I said, you know what, that's a great thing to put on the list. So we wrote on there, have you R&I'd everything for paint? But I said, let's take that a step further. Quite commonly what I see is most people will remove the door handles, the moldings, the mirrors, everything on the external, part of the vehicle in order to paint or blend. But what they seem to miss is the R&I internal. For example, a body man may weld a core support in, and when he welds the core support in, he welds it in this far away from the windshield washer reservoir, or this far away from an overflow tank. Well, can the painter really do a quality internal refinish this far away from something? The answer is no. So we said, let's go ahead and put on that list, have you R&I'd everything for paint external, and have you R&I'd everything for paint internal? Everybody totally agreed with it, and they totally got it. I asked them another thing, what's something else you think should be on the list? Somebody raised their hand, they said, how about R&I for safety? One of the things you may notice, especially if you go to the front of the CCC 1P pages or procedure pages, is that it says, ICAR states you should never weld within 12 inches of any electrical component. So one of the gentlemen in the audience who was a body man or in the staff meeting, he said, why don't we put on there, have you R&I'd everything for safety? And let's put little quotation marks, no welding within 12 inches. Great idea. We then went ahead and we continued to go through this list. Some of the other things we came up with, have you R&I'd everything to set the vehicle up on a frame machine? Have you R&I'd everything for access to corrosion protection? Maybe you're going to use a nail gun and you're going to actually weld pins to remove a dent from a door. Well, if that's the case, do we need to remove the door trim panel in order to finish off the little burn marks on the back of the door skin? Because in case water runs down through the belt molding, it could cause corrosion. How about if you R&I'd everything for access to measurement points? Maybe we need to R&I some floor under shields so we can actually pull measurements of the vehicle. Again, we need to do all this on the front end, not once the parts have been received. Speaking of parts, here was another thing we came up with. Have you R&I'd all the broken parts so they can be stored in one common place to be mirror matched? You see, a lot of times we expect our employees to mirror match, and what we do is the parts person has to go to the body man's stall to mirror match some of the parts. Then he has to go to a bumper rack. Then maybe some of the parts are stored in the car, and maybe some of them are even bolted on the front of the car. Well, that's 4 or 5 places the parts person has to go to mirror match parts. Is that really an efficient use of their time? So how about if we say, let's R&I every single part so it's in one common place to make it easier for the parts person to mirror match the components. What a great idea. So what we did is we wrote that on the list. The value is not in the poster, but the value is the discussion that takes place, creating that aha moment with your staff. And that's the merits of doing something with your team versus to your team. I'll give you an example. The shop that I've worked with, many shops, there was a shop where I worked with recently. Their cycle time was an average of 21 days. 21 days. You say, Mike, that's horrible. You may be laughing, but what's your cycle time? We saw that after doing this 100% teardown exercise with the staff, we saw their cycle time drop down to less than 10 days. Another example, we had a shop that had a 63% supplement ratio. That meant for every estimate they wrote, 63% of those estimates needed a supplement. We saw that reduce to less than 11%. We saw cycle time improve. We saw sales increase. We saw a lot of added values of doing this 100% teardown properly. So, what are some of the benefits in conclusion of doing 100% teardown? Well, number one is we'll have less supplements. Again, we'll be able to deliver those cars on time, so we'll be able to meet our on-time target delivery date. We'll probably have a lot less stress. We'll probably perform better if you're a DRP, and a lot of benefits to this. So in summary, what are some things you might be able to do to see if you're really doing 100% teardown? First of all, I would encourage any shop that you need to have a management system. And if you have that management system, I would encourage you to go and find out what your parts return ratio is. If your parts return ratio is higher than 6%, you have a problem. If your supplement ratio is higher than 11%, you have a problem. If your parts orders per RO, per vendor, which you may have to randomly audit this within an RO. If we do that, if your parts orders per vendor per RO are more than 1.7, you have a problem. So granted, there are a lot of management systems that will give us the data to see if we're doing 100% teardown. Thanks for joining us today. I would like to extend my gratitude and appreciation to CCC for allowing me to share my passion and enthusiasm with you. We're hoping you picked up some things that might help to improve your business, but also improve your quality of life. If you'd like more information about any ways that we can assist you, please feel free to contact me or my team at www.collisionadvice.com or contact CCC at their website. Thanks and have a great day.